Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I recently got my OneFinity up and running, and so in today's video I'm going to be taking you through a brief introduction to what CAD and CAM software is, since you need both of those to run your OneFinity. And then I'm going to use those programs to first surface the wasteboard of my OneFinity, and then I'm going to hop straight into my very first project. And I'll preface this video with, I am not a CNC expert. I'm very new to the CNC space. So this is less of a, how do you do this? And more about sharing my early experiences with this brand new capability. All right, let's go. Before I get into the CNC operation, I thought it would be helpful to provide a simple scene set for what a basic workflow in a CNC looks like. Starting from left to right, you've got CAD, which is your computer-aided design. That's where you build whatever thing that you are trying to design in the software. And then you go to computer-aided manufacturing, which is actually developing the instructions for how you will manufacture whatever it is that you designed. And then the third is the machine control. So looking at CAD, CAD is a broad term that can be used for a lot of different things. It could be used by the automotive industry, the space industry. Basically, anytime you're designing something using software, they consider that to be CAD. The particular software that I'm using is Fusion 360, and in this particular example, I'm making the side panels for my enclosure. Once you have that particular thing designed, you can then move to the manufacturing piece. That's where you set up your stock, you select your tools, and then the software will actually create the tool path. So this is where you're taking your design and translating that into the manufacturing world. It could be a CNC like we're using here, or it could be 3D printing. It's basically the translation of your design to reality based on the limitations of what your machine is capable of doing. In this particular example, I'm using a 1/4 inch end mill to mill out the inset of where my plexiglass is going to sit in the side panels of my enclosure. So you can see the computer-aided manufacturing software developed a tool path based on the feed rates that I gave it and the tool that I was using. Once you have that tool path generated, you then export that as G-code, which your CNC interprets as a set of coordinates for where it needs to be relative to the 3 axes that it has to work with. Now, the good news is you don't have to understand G-code. And if you are ever unclear about what your code is telling the bit to do, many CAM softwares actually have a simulation feature so you can actually see what it's going to do. I recently did a video unboxing and assembling my OneFinity CNC that came in, and I was really excited to put it all together, but I wasn't able to turn it on because I didn't have the monitor for the CNC. Well, now I do. It's finally come in, and the first thing I'm going to do before doing any projects is to surface the wasteboard to ensure that I've got a flat parallel surface to the cutter face of the router. So to do this, I hopped into Fusion 360 and I replicated the cutting area of my OneFinity CNC in the design software. Very simple rectangular shape that you can create in the CAD software. Then you hop over to the CAM software, the machining software, and you can create a tool path for your surfacing bit to remove a small bit of material off the top of the wasteboard. By doing this, you ensure that the surface is flat and parallel to the cutter face. Once you have this tool path, you can then export it as G-code, which your CNC takes as coordinates to actually do the cutting. So what you're looking at here is the very first time I ever controlled my CNC using G-code. And I tell you right now, it's frightening. I was very nervous as I was filming this. You'll also see that the cutter is not cutting along the entire tool path, which just tells you that the boards are not level with one another, and so you end up having to take incrementally deeper cuts to make sure that you're actually cutting all parts of the wasteboard. That's the only way that you can verify that every piece of that wasteboard is flat and parallel. So there's a few iterations of this particular step, but it's pretty straightforward, and it's a really good introduction of how to actually use the CAD software, the CAM software, and how to run your CNC. So if you have just got your OneFinity, I'd recommend doing this as a really good educational piece if you haven't actually used CNCs before. So I'm in that category. I've never used CNCs before. So the learning curve is pretty steep, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it's a whole lot of fun. And then your mind starts to go crazy with all the things you could possibly do with this machine. So more to come on that. For my first CNC project, I wanted to carve my logo on a scrap piece of plywood I had lying around. To start this project, I have to create a vector file for my logo. So to do that, I go to my internet browser and I type in this particular address, and I'll leave that in the description below. And basically that converts whatever picture you have into a vector file. The vector file, or .svg file, can then be imported into your CAD software. So you see me here moving my new vector file logo relative to the stock that I have designed in the CAD software. So this gray box represents the plywood that I'm going to be carving my logo from. Once you've got the design done, you can then move to the cam section and actually select a tool and generate a tool path. Once you've done that, you can simulate what is that going to look like and get a preview of what the tool path is going to do to the stock that you've got. Once you're happy with that, you export the G-code to your CNC and you let it run. This first pass carve was done with a 45-degree groove bit, but you can see there's still some additional material left in the saw blade itself. So the step 2 for this particular design is going to be going back through with a flat end mill to get rid of the additional material. So once all the cutting was finished, here's how the final product turned out. It was certainly not perfect by any means, but I was damn proud of what I had created. Maybe it's kind of like parents who love their ugly kid and don't know that their kid is ugly. Maybe this is the same thing. Maybe this is my ugly kid, but I really liked it. And what I did is I hit it with a little bit of spray paint, and then I sanded the very top of it. So all the spray paint that got into the groove stayed, and then all the spray paint that was on the top, I just kind of rubbed a little bit off so it had this weathered look to it. So I think if I'm going to do a full-size logo, I might do it in this similar style. While I still had my file open, I decided to do a second iteration of the same design. I chose a finer drill bit and decided to trace around the logo rather than actually carving out and hollowing out the logo. It's a different look, it requires a different bit, and it's a different milling operation. But since I had the CNC up and running and it was just a matter of a few clicks, I decided to do a second iteration. So I did that, and I spray painted my stock piece of plywood black before ever starting this. That way the lines that are traced out using the CNC really pop with the black background. Overall, I was happy with how this came out. It is a very different look because normally my logo is lighter color on a dark background, and this makes the logo look light on a dark background. So it's a little bit inverted, but it just shows you that you can create a much different look just by selecting a different bit and a different milling operation. That's going to be it for this particular video. I have a lot of things going on in my shop right now, and I'm trying to keep up with YouTube content and doing things in the shop. If there's something that you're interested specifically in me doing with the CNC, let me know in the comment section below. And for those that stuck around all the way to the end, I'm showing you a sneak peek of what my CNC closure is looking like. It's still in progress, but the video should be out in about a week or so, so stay tuned if you want to see more.